Hi everyone, I'm Sandy and welcome back to my channel. Today I have my April reading wrap up for you. April was a weird month for reading. I had some great books. I had a book that I threw and I had a DNF, and the book that I threw was not even the one that I DNF'd. So it has been an all over the place kind of month. I abandoned part of my TBR and just read some random books from the library. I had a couple of amazing buddy reads, and yeah, it was just kind of my plans went awry, is what I would say. I also really overstacked my TBR in the month of April to the point where it was like I had no hope of finishing it. And at some point, I just said, "Meh, I'm just going to do whatever I want anyway," which is actually very unlike me. Typically, I like creating the list, I like marking things off the list, but man, it just didn't happen in the month of April. So yeah, it's kind of all over the place, but we'll go ahead and go through everything. I will have my walking challenge update next week for you as well. So I won't include that book in this wrap up. But let's see how it goes, right? So what I usually start with on my wrap ups is my 1001 book countdown. And with my monthly number check in, my overall number of the 1001 was 817 at the beginning of the month, and my secondary number was 40. So every year at the beginning of the year, I pre-select 52 books. And I try and focus on those with the idea of getting that number down to zero. It makes the list a little bit more manageable for me. And hopefully, I will get that number to zero at some point. I haven't made it any of the years I've been out here, but I'm trying. I am still really enjoying this project though. So hopefully you consider giving me a like and a subscribe and sticking around and seeing how far I get. How far did I get in April though? Great question. In April, I ended up getting to 813, which is great, and 37. So I'm a little bit behind on my 52 number. One of the books I read wasn't on my 2024 list, so I didn't get to count it for that. But overall, it was a decent reading month. So I have been ranking the books from least favorite to most favorite. So my least favorite book is probably no surprise to anyone who watched my countdown video. It is going to be The Cement Garden by Ian McEwan. I don't think I could rate this book any lower. I hated it. I hated the premise behind it. I did not like the character, did not like the incest in the storyline or the masturbation of young boys in this storyline. For me, this book was I've already thrown it once. I don't feel like I need to throw it again, but it absolutely could be thrown because, oh man, I wish I had DNF'd that book. That's not the book I DNF'd. The next one up is actually this one, Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. It wasn't horrible. I just didn't love it. I don't think I got enough out of it. All of the little stories and stories within stories for me was just a lot. And I'm kind of disappointed right now by Calvino and my ability to really understand it. So I hope I become a smarter reader, and maybe this will mean more to me. Or if I read it again and I have more time, maybe. But that one is the next one. The second from the top will be the book club pick, Hideous, Kinky by Esther Freud. This wasn't actually my favorite book this month. I didn't really connect with the characters, but compared to the other two, I liked it far, far more than that. It was definitely a disappointing book club pick for me. So that one is going to be second. And the number one book I don't have a physical copy of, and it was The Summer Book by Tove Jannson. This was a subscriber favorite pick, and I have to say that it was just delightful and charming and heartwarming, and full of all kinds of memories of you being a child and getting to go out and play or being and visiting your grandparents, things like that. It had just such a calming presence to it, and I really appreciate it. So thank you so much to the subscriber who recommended that book, because you made my 1001 book list with this as the number one book I read in the month of April. There were two other books that I had on my TBR. One was God Bless You, Mr. Rosewater. I have read this now. I have finished it. I think I even finished it in April, but it hasn't been in a countdown video yet, so it'll get included in the May wrap up. And the other book that I did not finish was this one. I actually didn't even start it. The Adventures and Misadventures of Mackerel by Alvaro Mutis. Yeah, I didn't pick it up. I mean, maybe I was intimidated by the size of this one. I don't know, but it's going to go back on the TBR shelf. I'll pick it up sometime this year, maybe for the Big Book Summer Challenge this summer. I don't know, but I do have this one that I didn't make it through. All right, so those are the 1001 books, all done, discussed. What is next on my? Never have enough room to put anything down on my desk. I don't know how that happens. The next project I have is my oldest on my TBR project. And for that, I had selected The Drawing of the Three by Stephen King. This is the second book in the Dark Tower series. I actually appreciated this one more than The Gunslinger. I like the addition of the characters in this one. It is still really confusing. I do have the third book. I believe it's called The Wastelands over there. I don't know yet if I want to continue with the series. I'm not sure that, this series is really for me, but I did finish this one. So yay. And then the second one is this one, Where'd You Go, Bernadette by Maria Semple. This is my DNF. I did not like the format. I think that for me was what was really, I struggled with the most in this particular book because it was constant like back and forth of the narrator. It had like almost there were email kind of messages back and forth, things like that. And I just couldn't connect with anyone in this particular story. And I just gave up after a while. It's like, you know what? It's not really one I have to read. It's not on 1001 list. It's not on a project list other than my own wanted to get books read off of my list. So I have DNF'd it. I'm not going to pick it up. It's going to go in the pile to get donated and it'll get out of here. Yeah, I'm very disappointed. I really wanted to love this one and it just didn't happen. All right, I had two buddy reads, group reads for the month. The first one is, Cibola Burn by James S.A. Corey. I read this with Sarah at Fresh Liver Books, Gemma from Gemma Books, and Fraser Simon from Springboard Thought. And this book did not disappoint at all. I continue to adore the series. I have read all of the little novellas coming up to this, the short stories coming up into this particular book. This was book 4. And this one did not disappoint. There was so much that I loved about this particular one. I, of course, continue to love the character Holden. There were some surprise characters that came back in this one, or one character that came back, or two characters actually came back, and connections that James S.A. Corey makes to prior books is really fascinating. I loved what happened because it was unexpected, and what they wanted to happen, like some of the powers that be in the story or the political influence, that didn't happen in this. And so I was like, oh, very cool. There were definitely moments where my favorite characters were in major peril again with this particular book. And I managed to not go rogue for, I think it was 8 days. I think it was 8 days. That's kind of a big deal for me, a big record for me. Was it 8 days? I don't remember, but I did last a very long time. I mean, unbelievably long time with this one. So completely loved it. We are reading book 5 in June, so I only have to wait a month to read the next one. But yeah, oh, so good. If you haven't read the Expanse series, I would say pick up the first couple of books because I got sucked in and I just don't want to put them down. It's so hard to wait to read these. I'm not going rogue enough though to read the 5th book, but I want to. So yeah, that was the other one. And my other buddy read was Bel Canto by Ann Patchett. I read this with Heidi at my reading life. I love reading with Heidi. It's always so much fun going through things. I have to say, I loved the start of this book. I thought the beginning of this book was phenomenal, from how the characters were introduced and the premise and these terrorists coming into where there was this private concert, private opera for someone's birthday, and just all of those different pieces and characters. And there was a level of absurdity to that part of the story that I also thought was really funny. And I loved that component of it. And this opera singer who was just held at such high regard. And a lot of the story ends up revolving kind of around her. About the middle of the book, it started to get very repetitive. It's like, okay, are they ever getting out of here? Are they ever going to get to a point where someone is going to be released, or is someone going to die? What's going to happen with this? And it drug on for a fair amount in the second half of the book. I also say I didn't love the epilogue in this, and kind of like the after of what happened. I was like, yeah, not my favorite as well. But, I do like Ann Patchett's writing. This is now my second or third, depending on if I actually read The Dutch House, because I don't remember. It's in my Goodreads as read, but I don't remember. But this one, I do like her writing. I did like Tom Lake, so I will keep reading and seeing if I like any others. But I'm very happy to have finished Bel Canto. And thank you again to Heidi for reading it with me. I absolutely adore reading with you. So thank you so much. In addition to that, I did have a couple of other books. I had a late add-on of A Council of Dolls by Mona Susan Power. And this book was a subscriber favorite that I picked up on a whim. I believe it was recommended by Ann Gibson, if I remember correctly, according to my lovely spreadsheet that I have. So thank you so much for recommending this book, because I have to say, I adored this book. There was so much in it that I couldn't put down. It has 3 different generations of women and their stories, and it is told through, the first one is through a young child's perspective, and also through her doll that she has, whose name is Ethel, which I think is fantastic. And Ethel can talk to her. She has a voice for Ethel in her head. And the connection between those two and how it was done was so incredibly charming and terrifying at times. And I felt like that part of the story just pulled me in a way that I did not expect. And you get to see this young girl and her relationship with her mother, and just what happens in that part of the story is pretty awful. And then after that, you go back in time to the mother story. The mother also has a component where she had a doll in there as well. But you go through and find out more about why maybe her mom was the way she was. And then you go back one more generation to her mother, and also there is a doll in there. And the last part of the story comes back to the young child as a grown woman and closes kind of everything out. There is a lot about, I believe it's Native Americans in here and how they were treated, about how the schools were done, and the boarding schools where they tried to, I guess, re-educate them. I'm not sure if that's the right term. So Mona Susan Power in the author's notes talks about that a little bit, talks about what she tried to keep true to what actually happened, the experiences that people had, because there was a lot of mistreatment of kids, of people in this book as well. And so that was also very, very difficult, but so incredibly compelling and so well done. Typically don't like stories that maybe don't have a traditional kind of timeline, but this one was very easy to follow because it went backwards, but it wasn't scattered. And I really connected with the different characters in it and thought it was so good. Highly recommend. It's my one really 5-star book of the month, and probably my favorite one for the whole month ended up being that subscriber favorite book. So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate that recommendation. The other books that I ended up picking up, I picked up Boyhood by Reuven Fenton. That book comes out later this month in May. It was an advanced reader copy. I have a dedicated review for that particular one. I also ended up reading The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This was a impulse buy when I went off of my book buying ban. I picked this one up, and I have to say, this is kind of a young adult fantasy novel, and I really enjoyed it quite a bit. And mainly I enjoyed it because I did not see the ending coming in this one. I didn't. The main character fooled me. She got me. I'm not the only one necessarily. Some of the characters in the book might have been tricked as well. But I really liked it. I liked it enough that I ordered the second book in the series, which is The Wicked King. So I can't wait for that one to show up. Hopefully it'll be here, I think today maybe. But I did end up picking up this one. I also picked up Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. Yeah, I picked up Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross from the library. I don't have it anymore. I took it back. And I liked that first book quite a bit. I like the magical premise of the typewriters and how they sent information back and forth, and they're but it had a little bit of this trope of a enemies to lovers kind of piece in it, which isn't my favorite trope in a book. The magical component I thought was really fascinating and how it worked, but it lost me at the ending. It did. The very, very end of it made me go, I don't know if I want to read the next one. So I haven't bought that one. I haven't checked it out from the library, and I haven't reserved it from the library. So that's the one other book that I was like, I don't know. I also had on my TBR The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff. It was a library book. I didn't read it. I took it back. The other book that I did end up reading was actually Mind Games by Nora Roberts, and I will have a dedicated review coming out for that advanced reader copy as well in the next week. So, like I said, big mix. DNF, a book was thrown, some random pickups of books, a 5-star read, some amazing buddy reads. Yeah, it has been just an exceptional reading month, an unusual reading month, maybe is a better word. And if you haven't watched my May TBR video, I intentionally scaled it back so I didn't have as much pressure to try and read as much. I just want to kind of take it easy and maybe select some books that I am really interested in reading and see if I can improve my quality of the books that I'm reading this month over some of my projects that I've had. So yeah, that's my update for you. What did you read in the month of April? What was your favorite book? I would love to hear that. If you don't feel comfortable leaving a comment, you're always welcome to leave me an emoji. And since it is raining up here in the Pacific Northwest today, why don't you leave an umbrella? That would be amazing if you leave me an umbrella. So as always, like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, everyone, thanks. Bye.